All right. Well, thank you for showing up, Peter and BJ. Like now we have an inspector and a real estate agent, and you got your loan officer here. So, like tell us a little bit about you, BJ. Like, what do you do? How long you been in the business, and what kind of services do you provide for the clients?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you, BJ.
So, yeah, I'm BJ Poznecki with Inspect and Check. I've been in business a little over 5 years now. We are a full service home inspection company, so we do everything one stop shop: the inspection, radon testing, mold, scoping the sewer, um, you know, lead testing, a few other things, but those are kind of like the most popular services and the services that add the most value. And yeah, we service the whole Chicagoland area. We'll go all the way north to Wisconsin border, Rockford, DeKalb, Kankakee, and I'm even licensed. I've been doing too much in Indiana lately just because I've been so busy here. But I am also licensed in
Indiana.
Indiana
Oh, good
too.
to
So
know.
yeah, so I'll touch Northwest Indiana every once in a while. I got a couple home inspector friends a couple home inspectors that I've become friends with out there. That if I'm just too busy, send it to them. So
Oh, nice.
yeah.
So, what are the biggest things that you are a good inspector on that you recommend for the clients to get? I'm pretty sure like the sewer, like checking the scope in the sewer is like a big thing because unfortunately I had a client that purchased a home and the sewer was cracked, but like towards the city
Mm-hmm.
limits, and he ended up paying for it. And then the thing is that we did the scope of work, but it wasn't like too detailed. And like, do you go like the whole way around like to the city line? Do
City
you
line,
get a
yeah.
camera or like what's like the main service that you recommend for them?
Yeah. So the sewer scope, in my opinion, now that I've been in business 5 years and I probably have done, I don't know, 500, 600 of them, I feel like it's almost the I almost feel like it's more important than the home inspection because it's what you can't see that like worries me. Like you said, right? You spend all this money, you buy a house,
Yeah.
and sewer repairs can get. I mean, look, just to open up, obviously it depends on where it is, what's above it. Is there a tree? Is there
Mm-hmm.
sidewalks, driveway? How deep is it? 6, 8, 10 feet, right? There's all these variables, but just right off the bat, you're anywhere between 3 to 6 thousand just for one repair.
Jeez.
So yeah, it can add up quickly depending on the extent of the damage.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I see it with the inspections right now with all my clients. Most of my clients, sewer scope is so much more popular than it was 5, 6 years ago. I
Mm-hmm.
would say 75 to 80% of the inspections now have sewer scope, which is great. It's that added peace of mind for the client.
Yeah, and honestly, like I think that if an inspector offers a sewer scope, it's like totally worth it. I would, me personally, I would rather pick someone that has a sewer scope because you never know, man. These tree branches and the roots and all that, they get in the middle of it, and then they may not appear like to be something drastic at this point. But eventually, the trees just keep growing, and the roots are gonna hit it, and they're gonna crack the pipe or anything, and it's like a big deal because we live in Chicago, we get flooded all the time, and especially if you see the sewer line being kind of like, well, it's all right. Hey, you could get a credit, and you could actually fix it and have that peace of mind that you're never gonna get backup water, or that you flush your toilet and the water's actually gonna drain out. You don't have to worry about that. And so it's great that you do that. Not a lot of inspectors that I've heard. They just take a quick look and all right, let's go.
Yeah, that service, in my opinion, like I said, I can't stress it enough. Adds the most value, I think, to the
Right.
customer.
And it's worth mentioning why the sewers are so important because they were long time ago made out of clay, right? Like the piping was made out of clay, so people were thinking it's gonna last for years. Well, it lasts for years, but not 100 or 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, a lot of those sewers, coming out, breaking out. So it's very important, especially in the Chicago area when there's a little bit older real estate to check sewer.
Yeah, well, and the challenge is too is, you know, like the trees, right? We have a lot of mature trees, you know, in this area, being, you know, that we're an established city, and, you know, once the trees know that there's a water source, they just keep going back. So the thing is you can budget for just cutting them back, but to Jose's point, you know, like there's a point where you just have to make the repair because it's just gonna, you know, eventually, or it could eventually damage the pipe and collapse it. And
Yeah.
you know how life is. It's going to happen when you have a house full of people on Christmas, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, you know,
Yeah.
the sewer's
Yeah.
backed up.
Yeah, sewer is one
So.
of the worst things that if they break, you know, it does so much damage and trouble to the owners, and it's not cheap to fix. You know, it's kind of expensive to call a plumber and dig it and fix it. So, you know, just that, you know, $200-300 extra sewer scope, I think is you know worth you know that money that you spend.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, yeah, and especially like a lot of our clients, you know, they take a while to save up a amount of money, and for them to go ahead and be like, oh, you know, like within the year they got to spend like $6,000 to $7,000, and then maybe, you know, cut down a tree and do little repairs like that, you know, that hurts a lot of our clients' pockets, you know, and it's like a good thing to make sure that, you know, we're giving them a good product and they get a good inspection and they get the best real estate agent, you know, like Peter, and get some credit and help you save some money at closing costs too.
Right.
And what's another major repair that you check on?
Yeah, well, so here, I'll, you know, I'll just run through my process. So I always like to start on the outside of the house. You know, I get to the house early. I like to do the whole outside, you know, with the roof. If it's safe and I can get up there, it's not too steep or too high, I'll go up on it. Otherwise, I'll send the drone up there. Do all my outside work, come in. I like to get everything turned on, you know, all the homes, you know, kitchen appliances, laundry, whatever's in the home, get it turned, you know, on, up and running. And then I like to start up and just kind of work my way down, going room to room, testing and checking everything. Yeah, my reports can get a little long-winded because I just touch and test everything this way, you know, and put it in the report. But then I have 3 different categories that I like to put things into: blue, orange, red. So blue is like minor maintenance things. And I always have this with the customer, and I always tell them, hey, like, don't be overwhelmed when you see this long report. I put everything in there. But then I have these 3 icons: blue, orange, red. Blue, minor maintenance things like door sticking, outlets, loose, piddly stuff. Orange are recommendations. Those are things that would be good to put on their to-do list, you know, so like caulking in the bathtubs, or if one of the GFCI outlets are not working outside or something like that, you know, you could just kind of tackle it whenever you get a chance and get moved in. And then even if it's an easy fix, if it's anything electrical, water leaking, something not working, radon's high, mold, sewer problem, I'll use the red defect, you know, and I always go over those first, you know what I mean? Because I could use it for a $50 part to a sewer problem that's going to be thousands of dollars. So as far as after the sewer scope, another major area, or another area that I find issues, and I think it's just because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, is mold in an attic. That's probably my number one thing that I see. Look, at nobody's up there, right? I mean, you know, unless if you maybe store some stuff up there, which I really don't suggest, you know. But, you know, unless if you're happen to, you know, to be up there, you know, it kind of gets missed. And a lot of times what it is, if we don't have enough ventilation in there, we always need this positive flow of air movement. What happens is if it's hot and muggy, that's a feeding ground for mold to grow. So I would say that would be my number one thing that I usually see.
Yeah, and so I can say that
probably have
number
had our
one
fair share
cause of canceling deals, or, you know, having a seller to give out a credit, you know, or, you know, do remediation on it, which is another way to fix it up.
Yeah.
But what is the main cause of that mold, do you think? What is and what should the owner do, like the future owner that just bought a house, to prevent that?
Great question. So 99 out of 100 times it's usually due to a lack of ventilation. So it's it's having it actually could be up to 3 contractors to fix it. But so it's typically, so ideally how the roof is designed, or how we do things now, just to keep it simple. Now the roof design is we have perforated soffits, so that area where your gutters are, there's holes or slots, and that allows the fresh air to come up and in. And then up top you either have a ridge vent, dome vent, which are those little squares that you see, and that allows the hot air to escape and exit the attic. So we want, that airflow going through there. So if those are covered, right, a lot of times people will add insulation and they'll cover those soffit vents, or sometimes they had the roof redone and they covered the upper vents and didn't install new ones, or they didn't make the ridge vent opening wide enough. I've seen that as well. So it would be having a roofer get us more airflow, working in conjunction with the mold remediation contractor, because we have to obviously remediate the mold, but if we don't add more ventilation, it's just going to come back. Yeah, we've seen that a bunch of times. And then if the insulation is low, then it's actually a third contractor having an insulation contractor come back in after that work has been done and adding insulation, because not only does the insulation obviously keep the hot and cold out, in extreme temperatures, but that resistance value of the insulation also keeps, right, hot air rises, cold air falls. So it keeps the hot air that has moisture, right, from in the home, whether it's a humidifier, cooking, breathing, showering, right, that moisture accumulates in the air and then it rises up. Well, if there's not enough insulation, then that also adds, or goes up into the attic and adds to the already high humidity level in the attic, causing the mold.
Okay.
So yeah, it couldn't get, depending on the situation, right, it's case by case, it can get costly, because it can be 3 contractors, a roofer, mold remediation, and insulation.
And what do you think? Because when I bought my house, there were 2 fans installed, and those fans automatically turn on and off. What do you recommend installing fans like that? What do you think about that?
So when we usually have an issue, a moldy, non-vented attic issue, I usually tell people, hey, let's just have the roofer look at it, because they're gonna create a scope of work that's the least invasive. So if that's what they recommend, then I would say go that route. Sometimes they rather add, just regular vents, because obviously, like, the fans are great. They have them with thermostats and humidistats now, which is good, because we have some unusual weather here in Chicago, where I've had situations. So before I opened my business, I used to work for Pulte Homes, a home builder, and we've had some situations where we had humid weather and then a snap freeze, and now the moisture that was up in the attic turned into frost. And it's kind of like, when if you ever had a problem with your refrigerator or your freezer, right, that frost keeps building on top of it. And then all of a sudden you get, like, today it's 60 degrees. All of a sudden everything melts, and it's like water coming through your ceiling. You know what I mean? Right. So they make the fans with the humidistat now too, to remedy that. So yeah, I love the fans. I really usually when we have a situation like this, I usually kind of defer to the roofer, like, hey, what do you think is best, right? Because I try to minimize the moving parts, right? Because eventually, right, everything gets old. Eventually, everything breaks. So the fans, right, that's a mechanical component that eventually could fail.
Speaking about humidistat, when I had those fans, when I bought a house already installed, I thought those fans are going to be turning on and off whenever it's humid outside. But I realized after so many years that they actually turn on in wintertime when it's super cold, or they turn on when there's not really humid outside. And that tells me that actually the attic is opposite what it is outside. It gets probably so humid in the attic when it's not really humid outside. And, it's good to have those fans, especially with the humidistats, so they can turn on and off whenever it needs to be turned on and off.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can adjust them, right? You could adjust the temperature on when they turn on, as well as the humidity level as well. So, yeah.
I didn't even know that they had those sensors for the fans. Like, I've seen the fans in the attics. They just turn them on whenever they want and turn them off call it a day. Just so I figured that it was just something to bring the airflow for the house. You open up the window. It's like springtime. You're like, all right, spring cleaning. Let's
Back in
turn
the
this
days,
on.
they had those huge
You know?
fans, and then you turn it on and on a switch. But these days, they have that thermostat and humidity.
Yeah, well, are you referring to a whole house fan? The one you see on the ceiling?
The one I see on the ceiling, yeah.
So actually, those I actually suggest removing them. So that's kind of a thing of the past, those whole house fans.
Right.
And the thing is now again, whatever. Well, here, if you open up the windows and use them, use it that way, you should be okay. But my fear with them is again, now you're bringing more humidity, whatever's in the home, up into the attic.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I did just have a case, like 3-4 weeks ago, where unfortunately the attic was. I mean, there was some other issues, but it also had that whole house fan, and it was full of mold. I mean, it was a big job, big job.
Yeah.
So, I I'm a little skittish about them just because I've seen some issues. And again, I'm always coming from the perspective of how to, essentially bulletproof the house where we don't have issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, the good thing is most of those fans don't work anymore. You go to the houses to inspection, most of them, they're there, but they're not working.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's
Most
a
of the time,
good thing now, but before
back in the days,
probably, we were not as knowledgeable as some of the, like you are, I never knew about putting up little fans with thermostats or humidifiers in there, and none of that, because you don't think about it. Especially in Chicago, you have homes that are over 100 years old. They're built in the 1800s and early 1900s, and then you're like, how has this structure been here for so long, and how are we going to make it last another 100 years? How can we do that? And little tips and tricks that go a long way. They actually help you save money in the long run. You get an expert like yourself, you check everything out for them, and that house is 100 years old, but hey, it's a home of the future now, and it's a wonderful thing that you have this knowledge that a lot of people don't have it. I didn't know that, and I've been doing this for a few years. I have my own home too. This is like my second home, and I never thought about how's my attic doing? Is it hot? Is it cold? I will just go up there and it's hot. I'm like, all right, I gotta get out of here. Store some pots, some pans, some clothing, and get out of the way.
Yeah. So we talked about sewer. We talked about attic mold. I think that third issue should be foundation. I think foundation and structural issues is another cause of deal cancellations or worries. What do you see when you do inspections? What's the most common problem with the foundation? I
can't tell you and stress how important it is to get your gutter downspouts away from the house. No. I've seen the whole northeast corner of a house settle because there was a gutter downspout there. Obviously it takes time, right? This is over years, and those repairs. I had a house in Lombard that the whole northeast corner of the home, all the way up, settled, where it was like a $75,000 job to fix. Oh. All because of a $10 piece of gutter that you could. Even if you just did something for the time being, if it's not necessarily the most sightly looking thing, just to get the water away, and then if you want to do something nice and do a buried downspout underground or whatever. But right. The biggest foundation issues I have seen have been all due to a gutter downspout.
Water damage. Yeah,
just water, because what happens is that water, it just runs down, goes underneath the foundation, and then eventually washes out the underpinning, right? So we have
part of the house collapses, right?
Right. Yeah. So it washes out the the stone and the earth that's underneath the footing, and then everything just starts to sink from that point. Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, I do see the big importance of that, because when I purchased my home, I closed on it one day. The next day, I didn't go the day of closing. I was just busy at work. The next day I go and the house it's flooded. Has water inside of it, and we knew that the house didn't have gutters, so that's like the first thing that we fixed in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like having your gutters, having everything closed up, like the roof and all that. It's a big deal. And unfortunately, at that time, the inspector that checked it, he did tell me, like, hey, the house doesn't have gutters. I'm like, oh, yeah, no, it doesn't, and you're like, oh, well, the water will just run off or whatever. No, yeah, the house got some water inside of it. Put the gutters right away, put the downspouts, put them away from the house, and, we saw the big difference. We haven't had that issue again, But it's good also, the inspection matters a lot. Like the appliances, the furnace. Like what do you think about these furnaces now? And how important is it to have a humidifier in your furnace now? Because it's all blown air, and I do see the benefits of that. And like the inspector recommended it before too. He's like, hey, this is an older furnace. It's probably gonna throw like super dry air.
Mm-hmm.
The people that had the house before really didn't take care of it. So it's like, we have to maintenance the furnace right away. We have to make sure that the appliances are working. They did some painting here and there, but it wasn't like the best. They put GFCI outlets, and they were not really working that well either. So all these little details, they add up. They added up. Like they put vents, they put the fans up in the washroom, and they go to the ceiling. They don't go anywhere. And then next thing you know, my ceiling's cracked. So I had to go ahead and put a whole vent outside of the house. And it's like the little things that inspectors pick up. It's like a big deal. And
did you have an inspection on your house when you
I
bought
had
it? You bought it as is? Was it like a foreclosure?
It wasn't a foreclosure. It was like a contractor had bought it from the previous owners, and they just slapped on new cabinets and granite countertops, and and put like little lipstick and some makeup on the house. And I came in there, we're like, wow, looks great, it looks modern, and it's it's an older house. And
then you live and you see what's
then I
going
live
on,
there,
right?
and it's like, oh man, oh, that makes sense. I gotta fix this. The inspector didn't catch this, or the inspector didn't catch that. But it's good to know that there's inspectors out there like BJ that actually know what could happen, and what is convenient for you to do from the beginning, because these things add up, man. Like I had to replace the whole ceiling, patch it up, run a whole new fan out, and run a whole line, a whole vent to go outside of the house. And that actually costs a little bit of money and time, but it's totally worth it. And if I would have done it before I moved in, that's a lot more convenient.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of inspectors out there, but I can truly say BJ, I worked with him for a few years, is so detail oriented, and it's really worth to inspection with one of the inspections with him. It's a night and day between him and some other inspectors, and I highly recommend to give him a try, especially when you buy a new house. If you're first-time home buyer and you haven't had experience with buying homes. He will go over every detail, and he explain it to you, what needs to be done, how it needs to be fixed, or he will reach out to you in a couple of days if he doesn't have an answer right away, how to do it, and what the next step would be.
Thank you. I appreciate the
and it does matter to have a good inspector. Like I said, you're making one of the biggest investments in your life. You want to buy a home or purchase a house, whether it's an investment or it's for your own personal use. You're bringing in your family. You're bringing in families that you want to make sure that they're safe. And having that mold issue, simple things like that you catch, that matters a lot, because the health matters to our clients. Like
right. Yeah, you have kids with allergies. You have people with adults with allergies. It could be something hidden in your attic, and you may be getting sick all the time. You don't even know about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You already get sick as it is with the pollution we have outside of the city or in the city, and then imagine you go home and that's your safe place, and it's actually making your health worse. Like that could be a big issue. Especially we want our clients to be happy, to be content with the house that they purchased to make sure that they got the best deal and they got the safest house possible. Especially investors. Like they know that they have to invest some money, but invest it in the right things that the inspector, recommends. And like knowing so much about ventilation and you've been doing the inspection. Like I've never had a inspector really talk about like how much detail you have talked about in the past few
Because-
minutes.
Thank
so,
you.
So what are the new things? What are the things that are coming out right now for the inspectors? I know every year, every 2 years, there's something new. Like sewer scope was 5, 6, 7 years ago, or any other testing right now that is fancy that people can do that you weren't doing it before.
Yeah, the mold testing. Mold, we can also do, well, if I see something in an attic, we can always swab it and send it into the lab. But a lot more people, to your point, are becoming more informed and educated. It's a more knowledgeable buyer. People are doing a lot more research nowadays with all of, ChatGPT and all the resources that we have. And the mold testing has really picked up a lot. Yeah, I'm having a lot more people order the mold testing. So that
is it mold testing, or is it like an air pollution test, or
we can do an air quality test as well.
quality,
Yeah.
okay.
So with that service, we always have to take a sample outside. So we always lose one to the lab for a control sample because there's always mold spores in the air. So we take a sample outside, and then the lab will use that sample outside, and then we'll take samples throughout the property, in different levels. It depends on how the property's laid out. Each sample covers about 800 to 1,000 square feet. But then we'll take samples throughout the home, and then the lab will use that control sample, and then they will see and look for elevations throughout the home.
okay?
So, and that's gotten a lot more popular with people. And then what we can do with that canister, if people would like, is we can also, because it's consuming, it's sampling the air, so it's already in there. If they want for an additional charge, we can also do an air quality test where it's looking for skin cells, insect fragments, things of that nature.
Let's be honest. Mold is not only attic. Mold can be behind your drywall, or it could be under your floor.
Yeah.
Or in your basement, anywhere that you don't see, and air quality test, mold testing. That gives you an idea, what part of the house there's, congestion, right?
Yeah, well, there are there are limitations with everything. So, with the air testing, if something is encapsulated behind the ceiling, wall, or floors, the machine may not pick it up. It has to be airborne. So unfortunately, if somebody's concerned about something behind a concealed surface, the only thing you can really do, which unfortunately we're not allowed to do during home inspection, because we're not allowed to do any destructive testing, is we would actually have to drill holes in that area and use what's called a boroscope and actually visually look up into that area. So that is the disclaimer with that. There are some limitations where if the mold is encapsulated behind an area, the machine may not pick it up.
Okay.
Well, it's good to know.
I always like to be transparent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? On what we can and
especially
can't
on
do.
inspections. The sellers, the owners, they don't want any damage. They don't want anything to be moved. It's really hard for them as inspectors to do, thorough inspection, because, they don't want to just be liable for damaging something, and then have owner or seller be really mad about it.
Well, I honestly would recommend the new owner of the home, especially if you have kids that have, they're allergic, they have a lot of health issues, a lot of respiratory issues, and it's good that can they call you again, and can you go and do the scope of work, inside the wall afterwards? They purchase the home and they want to make sure that, hey, I want to make sure that, that I don't have any mold behind the walls, that I don't have any mold around the house. Now you could actually go and put a drill, because, sometimes there's people that just like patch it up, like I said, they just put something to look pretty, and the wall is closed. But behind that wall, there's a lot of mold. There's water running from a pipe that's maybe dripping a little bit of water, and then that becomes a big issue, especially with these older homes that they had plaster in them, and that thing is like hard as a rock. And like, would you recommend someone it's still, are they able to communicate with you and call you up and be like, hey, BJ, come check it out, drill some holes in here, and let's make sure that this house has no mold, no airborne things. And
Well, at that point, then I would recommend like an environmental hygienist, because that kind of exceeds. I'm just gonna be honest with you guys, with the mold testing, I'm just kind of a glorified sample taker. So there's a point where if somebody wants to get that in depth with it, or if somebody has autoimmune disorders, maybe autistic children or mold toxicity, somebody has a bigger health issue, then at that point we want to bring in somebody that specializes specifically in that. So at that point, then I would recommend an environmental hygienist, and they have specialty tools. They have all the boroscopes and thermal imaging cameras and other tools that are specific to just that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so you actually know people that would be able to, you could recommend, and they could follow up with them and get all the right testing done.
Yeah, because we would always start, like, if we do have, I've had situations where the mold came back high. That is just the start of it, and with the air testing, it's picking up in the air, and that's why we have to kind of section off the house or the property, right, to kind of narrow in where the problem is. But then at that point, then an environmental hygienist has to come in and further evaluate it, because it could be 30,000 spores in a 3-inch radius, or it could be scattered throughout this studio. You know what I mean? And then that's when they take, okay, we've established that there's an issue, and then they would come in with their specialty equipment and take it from there.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you do a lot of inspections for home buyers, people that they're about to close or purchase the house. But I'm sure you're getting phone calls from people that already own homes, or people that bought a house at the auction. They've never done an inspection. They want to do some construction. What are the other inspections that you get called on? Like who are the people that you do inspections for?
Yeah, I'll do. Well, it's still a strong seller's market. Is that safe to say?
Yeah. Especially in this Chicago area right now.
Yeah. So I usually actually kind of talk people out of doing pre-listing inspections, and you could speak to this better than I could, but unless if everybody's going to fix everything on the report, you have to disclose it. So it's really not in your best interest, right? So I kind of tell people, hey, I'm happy to do whatever you want, but maybe talk to your agent and kind of think it over, because you better probably just list in the house and then let the buyer have their inspection and just deal with whatever issues come up at that point. I do a ton of new construction, especially here in where we live. So yeah, I do a lot of pre-closing inspection. So usually you have an orientation like a week and a half before your closing date with the builder, where you'll go through and they'll talk about all the functions and features of the home. At that time, I will do a pre-closing inspection, where basically it's the same thing in a regular home inspection. The only thing is, with new construction, I'm also looking at the finishes and the fixtures. So I am looking at, okay, this paint job's a little rough, or they missed this, or the cabinets need to be touched up. So I take it a step further, because it's a brand new house. So pre-closing, and then warranty. Most of the builders offer at least at a minimum, a 1-year warranty. Well, they'll come in and address any cosmetic, issues like seam cracks in the drywall, screw pops, stuff like that. As far as pre-drywall inspections, I've tell people I'm more than happy to do it if you want, but I've actually been kind of talking people out of those as well, because first off, the builder doesn't have to do anything that's on our list. All they have to do is satisfy the minimum code requirements set forth by that municipality. And I haven't been finding anything, because you got to remember, with where we live here,
Right.
you're building a house in the village of Downers Grove, right? They have multiple phase inspections while the house is getting built. By, usually it's by an electrician or a plumber or an HVAC guy, you know what I mean, that
Correct.
specializes in that, who is more skilled than I am, so they're looking at that, and it's not like the old days where you can just kind of, yeah, just go ahead and I'll sign off on it. Like, no, they want to make sure stuff is done, and done correctly before they sign off
Right.
on it. So
Right.
with that being said, I tell people, hey, you save your money on a pre-drywall. I haven't been finding anything. Two, they don't have to do anything.
Right.
So, but pre-closing and warranty inspections are the most. As far as once people move in, to circle back to your question, every once in a while I'll have maybe somebody that I'll reach out to do like an annual home maintenance inspection. They've been in the house for a while, or maybe they're renting it and considering buying it, which kind of would be a buyer's inspection. But I get some of those once in a while, but it's pretty minimal, And then as far as like people that are going to do a renovation and want to have somebody come in and look at it after, well, once in a while I might get something like that. But it's the lion's share of what I do is buyer inspections and new construction, pre-closing, warranty inspections.
All right. Great.
Well, that's good to know, because when you construction, like, even, we're all humans, some errors happen, like you may open one drawer on the kitchen and then the other one hits it, like, and little things like that you got to be careful with. And that's when you come in, because myself or Peter, we were walking by, we're like, oh man, this is nice. They have like nice handles for the drawers and the cabinets, and we don't notice things like that,
Yeah.
and then that's where you
as
come
perfect as the house looks, there's always an issue with the house.
in. Yeah.
And
no.
there could be smaller or bigger issue, but there's no perfect home, and you know about it too. When you go to these beautiful built homes, even brand new homes, you always find something.
Absolutely. And right, and when so I come from I come from the new residential remodeling and new home building. So I I get it. And you're right. We're all human. We all make mistakes. We all miss things, myself included. When people hire me for a new construction home, it's not about me trying to be a thorn in the builder's side and nitpick it. It's just about, hopefully, my intention, my goal is, when somebody hires me for a new inspection or a new construction inspection, is coming together with the builder is more of a collaboration and being a second set of eyes. Look, I get it. I've been like with Pulte Homes. I've been in their shoes. These guys are running. They're supposed to be in every house, every room, every day. Look at, it's impossible. It's impossible. You got these massive communities going up. You got houses popping up left and right. You got walks with customers, selections. You got all this stuff. It's hard to stay on top of everything. So when I'm doing a pre-closing inspection, for example, it's just about having another person that has the time allotted to go through the whole house, and not trying to, call out things that the builder missed. It's, a lot of guys in my industry, unfortunately, do that. But being that I come from the home building industry, what I'm trying to create, what we're trying to create here at Inspect and Check is, a collaboration with builders.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But like I said, you're the second pair of eyes. You see things that, Peter and I can't see,
Yeah, and it's a perfect crossover, right? So since I was in that industry, right, like I kind of, I do maybe have a little bit of an advantage of a different home inspector that maybe, is from a completely different industry. Like I've got some home inspectors that were in finance or, restaurants or this or that, and then they came into being home inspectors, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I do have that's where I may have a little bit of an advantage.
Yes, yeah, and I see people asking for somebody that has experience with new construction, or any trade there, construction, or any builders. And if you if you have that experience, that's a super extra plus for you.
It's very helpful,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. So I honestly recommend. I would recommend someone like, you, BJ, with the inspection, because you've dealt with construction before. You are pretty much like in the scope of work or second eyes for anyone that's out there looking at the house, and you tell them what the issue is. And sometimes you walk in there, you do the inspection with the clients are there as well. Like how important is that? Like, would you say it is?
I'm sorry. So that the client's there at the
But
inspection.
the clients there.
If you're available, it's always good to be at the inspection, because then this way we can go over things right then and there. You can see me physically, going through the house and how detailed and thorough I am. And then this way at the end we can go over things, because like I said, being that I put everything in the report, and the reason why I kind of put everything in the report is because I like, when I was in new home building, I kind of like my report to be a punch list and a resource that you can go back to. Like, I have a bunch of videos that I've made in the past. I put a clickable link in my report so people can watch those. So this report is this perfect resource of everything. And then the things that I've experienced in the past. It's not necessarily there's an issue or anything, but I'll put it in the report. Just, hey, you may notice this or you may notice that. Completely common. Watch this video. Here's why I made the video on it, because I've had people experience that in the past. So the report, I try to make it a resource, but again, it can get very overwhelming. So if you're there, at least we can go over and say, okay, let's just start with those, like I was saying earlier, the red defects. Okay, there's a couple GFCIs that aren't working by the kitchen. Big deal. A handyman, you want to have an electrician do it, great. If you want to have a handyman do it, it's fine. Or if you're up for it, you could do it yourself. Here, I got a video on how to do it. You know what I mean? You could just follow my instructions.
Oh, nice.
I try to put stuff like that, in the report for people. But with that being said, right, the report can get kind of long. So at least if you're there, we can talk over those things, and I could tell you, like, okay, this is not a big deal. Okay, we do have an issue with the sewer pipe. It's about 30 feet out. There's a massive tree there. I don't know how this one's going to go. Like, they may have to remove the tree, and, it could get kind of expensive. We need to get a plumber in here. We need to get some other people in here to look at it. Or there's mold in the attic, So it's always good to kind of go over those things and look at, nothing is a deal breaker. Look at it. Everything can be fixed. It's just, what's it going to cost? Who's going to pay for it? And that's where, Peter, your agent, your attorney, will be there to guide you, as far as, and hopefully the buyer and seller can come together and come to a deal.
Most of the times they do. We either ask for credits, repairs, or we just settle on a certain price. But speaking about your report being long, I think my buyers, they love it. They love it, and most of the clients should love it, because they keep this report for another 2-3 years, and they go over, when they have extra money, go over that list and see what they can update or what they can change in their house. I had a client calling me a few weeks ago, and he had an inspection with you maybe over 2 years ago, and he's like, I'm doing everything what BJ wrote in the inspection. I'm almost done.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
I kind of thought usually most of the stuff I say just goes by the wayside.
They keep it in. You send a PDF. They keep it in their file, and when they have budget for it, they'll fix it up, and they still doing it after 2-3 years.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, most of the stuff is smaller stuff that's in that report, right? It's just there for their knowledge. But that's good to hear. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
And how can people contact you? Do you have Facebook and Instagram?
Yeah, you can find me anywhere. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Just Google my name, BJ Poznecki. My number 773-403-3298. I'm always available.
Perfect.
Nice.
Thank you, BJ, for stopping by. Pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, guys.
I learned, quite a few things today, and it's Like I said, the inspection is very important for our clients, and we want to make sure that you get a top-notch inspector, and because this is a big purchase, and this is going to be your money, and your money spent well, and we want to make sure that your investment is secure, and by the inspection is going to be the best way to go through it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming.
Thank you for having me, guys.
All right.
Thank you.